What's an unusual fear or phobia you have that you've never shared?
Not anymore, but when I was younger, preteen to early teens, I had a really weird and silly, irrational fear that I would be the first recorded case of asexual reproduction in humans, because I read about it happening in other animal species that were incapable of reproducing asexually. I was like, well, how would I even begin to explain that to my parents? In hindsight, it's pretty funny, lol.
Facing a choking hazard while eating alone.
Hate touching food scraps off the dirty plates. It rubs me the wrong way.
When I'm driving too slow for some people and they decide to switch lanes to speed around me, I have an irrational fear that they might do something harmful as they pass me up.
When I first moved to Montana, we were driving somewhere over the interstate to have lunch. A dude from Washington was pissed that we weren't going 100 miles per hour. So he came around to my window and pointed a pistol right at my face while he smiled. I thought, this is it. And I told my husband that this dude had a pistol in my face. The guy tried to speed off when he saw the phone being dialed. My husband called 911, and they had us follow up until we couldn't anymore, just to keep eyes on him. The cops ran him onto a grass median right before our exit, and we saw him being arrested by like 8 state police. We had to write victim statements, as the state was going after him. They let us choose if we wanted to give him jail time, 1 to 2 years, plus a lesser crime title, or we could choose parole, plus assault with a deadly weapon. We chose the later option. That whole experience scared the hell out of me, especially having just moved here. It's a legit fear to have.
You can't live your whole life scared of people, weapons, etc., because then you will never truly live. Yes, it was a very scary experience, but it's like a 1 in a million chance that would ever happen again. So I take my chances. And also, now I always move over to the right lane whenever someone wants to go way faster than me. I try not to piss people off, even if it's not necessarily my fault.
Every single time I'm on a 4-lane and someone comes up next to me in the passing lane and then matches my speed, I start making peace with it, being my time, but also let off the gas so they get past faster, lol. Glad I'm not alone.
This happened to me, driving home from a friend's house at 2 a.m. on a Friday night. I was driving the speed limit on a well-lit 3-lane highway, sticking to the right lane. I was driving especially carefully because my phone had 1% charge remaining, and I was relying on GPS to get me down the local roads for the next 30 miles until I reached the main interstate highway I knew would take me home. A driver in a white Nissan sports coupe with tinted windows passed me on the very leftmost lane, going at least 30 miles per hour faster than me. We were the only 2 cars present, as the highway was completely empty. About 200 meters ahead of me, the driver suddenly decided to switch to the middle lane and slowed down until her car was exactly next to mine, matching my speed. It only took me 2 seconds to become completely spooked out by their behavior, so I slammed on my brakes pretty hard. Just then, the driver swerved forcefully into my lane, and their rear bumper came less than a few inches away from hitting my front bumper. The driver then sped off at twice the speed limit. My first reaction was to call the police, because who knows if that person was on drugs, or was a minor, or etc., etc. But since my phone only had 1% charge left, I had to hope that the other driver wouldn't seriously harm someone else, and BTW, my phone's charge lasted me the entire way home.
I've shared it to people I'm close with, but I am afraid of getting in trouble. I could do nothing wrong, and I'm still scared I'll be in trouble for something. I'm of age, but I'm still scared to order drinks because what if they take my ID away even though it's completely real and legal? A cop could drive by me, and I'm scared I'll get pulled over even though I'm driving the speed limit and following all the rules of the road. It's strange.
This was one of the determining factors in them giving me a generalized anxiety disorder (GAD) diagnosis. It's anxiety if it's uncontrollable and happens constantly in many different situations. And before I got a diagnosis, I felt so silly. Like going on vacation, it would be, what if I am accidentally smuggling a bomb without knowing? What if I didn't fold my clothes right and they take my luggage from me?
I have a mild version of this, Like if a cop turns its lights on, there's me. Or, man, was I speeding? I had cruise control on, right? How long have they been following me? Did I turn the damn blinker on? Then, there's me going through TSA, and every time I go through, or man, what if I do have one of those batteries in my luggage? Does my iPad count? Wait, heck no, we've gone several times with it. Did I use too big of containers for a carry-on this time? Man, I don't want to dump anything out. All on top of the, I hope my flight doesn't get cancelled/delayed, and I make all of my flights today.
You sound like my best mate. She's wildly terrified of disappointing people or feeling like people feel hurt or upset by her actions. Literally anything can happen. The most minor of problems can arise, and she immediately thinks you'll cut her off, block her on social media, and be angry at her forever. I've seen her break down into a panic over something forgettable and small to me before, and it kind of breaks my heart to see her go through that. Out of interest, did you have any particularly bad teachers? My friend in question here had a teacher who bullied her, so that didn't help, and I think is at least a huge part of why she's like that.
Any toilet I sit to use would have a snake come out of the water and bite my vulnerable parts. I'm bothered by this so much that I continuously check the water while I do business, and sometimes it's so strong I hover over the toilet to go.
Oh boy, exact same fear, but I know the reason why I have that fear. When I was 2 to 3 years old, my mom found a snake in toilet for real. Not sure where it was, as I was down for a nap at the time. All the commotion woke me up. It was a black cobra. So yeah, that was the moment it became a real possibility for me and has stayed with me all through my adult life.
My brother told me the boogeyman lived in the toilet. My parents saw me hurl myself so fast out of the bathroom after flushing, hit the wall so hard I'd crawl, run to my room and slam the door. I still find the sound of some toilets to be terrifying.
My brother watched the movie Spice World when he was like 5 yo. There was a man stalking girl band and he went through the toilet to spy on them in their home. My brother was afraid to go to bathroom alone for another 2 years or so.
Being teleported onto the Britain's Got Talent stage while I was in the middle of, well, handling some personal business.
I'm low-key scared that when I use the bathroom, I might zone out so much that I'm actually doing it in front of people in a totally inappropriate place.
The short story, I've got epilepsy, apparently love doing stupid stuff in my seizures. Things I've done. Tried to leave the house naked apart from a t-shirt, unsuccessful. Put a red pair of boxers over my jeans and pretended to be Superman. Tried to wear a cushion as a hat. Came home with next door's rabbit. Good job we're all friends. Had a seizure whilst using the bathroom.
I get this all the time. Poop dissociation. It's like when you were a kid and having a dream about being on the toilet only to wake up with a wet bed.
Ugh, this happened when I was like 7. Literally 25 years later, I still make sure I'm awake and on the toilet. That was such an embarrassing, traumatizing thing to wake up from, even being so young. So yeah, still low-key afraid of this.
It's not a crazy fear, but at this point, it's a habit. But I check behind the shower curtain while I'm brushing my teeth every night. I know there is no chance anyone's in there. I don't live on the bottom floor. I have a dog. I lock the doors. But IDK. I always just check.
I check behind the shower curtain for spiders, because spiders, and I've found them before. But every now and then I have this paralyzing nightmare where I'm convinced someone bad is in the house, and I have to check behind the shower curtain when I wake up. The dreams are so real, it leaves me unsettled for days.
I watched Sinister about 7 years ago. Usually I watch a horror, and I am fine after an hour, but this one has still stuck with me. The boogeyman in it still gives me the creeps just thinking about it. He was menacing AF. I would be scared to pull the bath curtain after a shower, because I always thought he'd be waiting on the other side. Sorry, don't mean to scare you even more.
Black holes. I find them very fascinating, being the most extreme objects in the universe. But if I ever found myself looking at one, and I knew what it was I was seeing, I'd feel insignificant, in awe, and absolutely terrified. I can comprehend the numbers and comparisons, but actually being up close to one, the thought alone fills me with existential dread. By extension, traveling near the speed of light would have the optical effect of making it look like a black hole was following you, as all the light from behind you would redshift out of the visible spectrum. That would be freaky. It'll just stick to looking out the front and seeing the stars stretch towards me.
I've regularly thought that the best way for me to die is going through a black hole.
Well, in reality, you probably wouldn't even be able to cross the event horizon before you would die. For the smaller ones, you just get spaghettified before you can enter as the gravity increases too quickly, and you basically get to do the leg bones connected to the hip bone in reverse. For the big ones, which usually have an accretion disk, will simply be putting out so much energy that you would be annihilated by the radiation long before you ever got close. And if it's a quasar, forget it. You aren't getting any solid matter within light years of it. If you could somehow find a non-spinning supermassive black hole with no accretion disk and no crazy magnetic field or radiation, then maybe you could survive crossing the event horizon. You might even survive for a few weeks beyond that, as the most massive black holes have event horizons 100x wider than the solar system, and you can only fall in at light speed, and you could still see all the light of the universe that fell in with you. But eventually, and inevitably, you'll be spaghettified when you approach the center, or whatever and wherever the center of a black hole is. But just think of that. An object 100x the size of the solar system that has an inescapable force, and whatever it is, you can't know because it hides itself entirely. If such an object took the place of Alpha Centauri, 4.4 light-years away, it would still appear larger than our own moon in the sky. Amazing and terrifying.
I've developed a fear of stairs. It started when I lost 3 immediate family members to cancer, father, aunt, mother, within 4 years. Then my other aunt, sister to my mother, so on the same family side, got a cancer diagnosis immediately after my mother's death. It was a lot. My legs shake now whether I'm going up or down. I have to look at each stair. There's no more muscle memory. Sometimes I have to stop and fight vertigo. I work on the 4th floor of a building, so stairs are nearly every day. It came with a gripping fear of passing semi-trucks on the highway, but I think I've overcome that.
I had something weirdly similar, but it was the fear that specifically I would fall down the stairs backwards while I was going up and break my neck. I still have to lean forward when I go up. The stress of all of the loss also triggered the onset of an autoimmune disease that affects my legs a lot, so I do have to hold the railing in case I'm too wobbly, so it might have been an early symptom of that. Some text hidden, in case it would make your fear worse. No pressure to actually read it.
Not one that I haven't shared, but I developed agoraphobia from having one single panic attack. Now it rules my life.
I developed claustrophobia from a single incident. I went on a tour of a stalagmite-stalactite cave with about 15 to 20 other people. To get down to the bottom, there was a tunnel with stairs carved out of the cave that was barely wide enough for one person to fit through, and it wasn't very tall in height either. I was about the 7th or 8th person in the line going down this long, narrow tunnel, maybe like 1 kilometer long. The woman in front of me, who was in her 50s, had some kind of panic attack/freak out because midway through the tunnel she said, "I can't do this," and just stopped moving. She just froze there and refused to continue walking down. She then crouched down and just started shaking and crying. We were at the halfway point, and I tried to console her, but she was hysterical. The person in front of her tried the same and gave up. Everybody tried to help. Eventually, the people in front of her gave up, and they all walked down. She just wouldn't move. Then, someone up behind us in the group lost their temper and got aggressive and started freaking out and shouting. He refused to walk back up because we paid money and it was the last tour of the day. Now I was stuck in the middle of them, unable to walk down or back up. At first, I was fine, but with the woman being hysterical and the man being angry and abusive, I started to feel immediate panic and doom. I started to shake and see spots everywhere. Eventually, the angry man was convinced by the tour guide that he could redo the tour privately, or something afterwards if we all got out so that someone could come down and help the woman. We walked back up, but the journey back to the top seemed to take an eternity for me after all that. Once I reached the top outside, I almost threw up. Afterwards, I developed a severe fear of enclosed spaces.
I have a phobia of the penguin on Wallace and Gromit. He got little creepy eyes and he wears the chicken wig. Don't know why, but can't look at it without gipping. Literally makes my skin crawl.
I don't know how uncommon this is, but I am terrified of public transport, especially subways. Being underground with so many people, especially people who seem to be violent, drugged up, etc., just makes me so anxious. It has really started to impact my life, where it's costing me a ton of money in Uber rides, or I literally don't go and do things I like, because the only way to get there is via public transport. Gonna start working on it in therapy though.
I have an unusual, irrational fear of getting or feeling sticky. I can't watch people get sticky. That scene in The Parent Trap where they pour honey or syrup from a bucket is absolutely terrifying. When I eat pancakes or French toast, I have to put my hair up, have a wet towel nearby, and rarely do I pour it over the pancakes. Most of the time I dip. Lastly, if I do end up getting sticky, I immediately run to the nearest sink and just pour water wherever I got sticky, regardless or my clothes getting wet. I do know where it stems from, but I've never gotten over it. Actually has gotten worse. I only tend to eat ice cream in the fall and winter.
I'm 34 and still afraid of the dark. I don't mind sleeping in the dark with my wife, but there have been times where she has gone out of town to see her sister, and I sleep in the living room with the lights on. And by sleep, I mean try and watch TV until my body literally can't stay awake any longer, because I'm afraid something will get me when I close my eyes. Typing it out makes me think I should get help. This shouldn't be going on for so long.
The fear of mediocrity. Waking up in 20 years to do the same old job for a company I don't even like, use every weekend as an escape, get a day off or two every couple of years for vacation, constantly stressed about loans, mortgage, car payments, etc.
I've lived on a mountainous island for my whole life. When I visit the mainland, I don't like how open it feels. Like the sky and surroundings are vast to to point that it makes me very uncomfortable. I also can't wrap my head around how big the mainland is and that it's all connected. People who move to an island often feel claustrophobic, but I feel the opposite.
It takes everything in my power to not sprint up the basement stairs after turning off the lights. I'm 37 years old.
I am deathly afraid of being completely naked in front of anyone. Ever. I just can't bring myself to do it. And I was married for quite some time. Still couldn't do it. Whenever I'm intimate with someone, the less covered up I am, the more internal panic, shame, and anxiety I feel, to where it takes me out of it completely. And the whole ordeal then just becomes a performance for the other person, so they believe I'm enjoying myself. Meanwhile, I am just trying to get things over with so I can out clothes back on. I cannot handle it. Also, those wooden basement steps with the open gaps between each stair.
Discovered I have a fear of deep water, which I can't see the bottom. This is after I served in the Navy.
It's big balloons or anything that is a large object. I don't like big art pieces, anything that is large that hangs from the ceiling or on a wall, boats, airplanes, helicopters, and anytime I see a large object, my legs start to get weak. Also seafood. I tried putting a piece of fish in my mouth trying to convince myself it's okay and almost passed out and couldn't do it. But most of all, which is more common, I have an intense phobia of bugs, and I have to talk myself out of boycotting food altogether. BC, there might be bugs in my food. I live in a constant state of anxiety that a bug might be nearby or might touch me, and if it does touch me, I need to shower or wash the area immediately.
I have a huge irrational fear of riding cars in the rain. I've had to stop my car on the side of the road until it stops raining, even if that made me terribly late. Full-blown panic attacks, just trying to get on a cab from the airport because it was raining. and I can't leave my house or wherever I am until it stops raining. I have no idea where this fear came from, and I've been working through it with a therapist, but it's so incredibly excruciating. I'm very ashamed of it, so only my close family knows about it. I guess I'm a bit lucky it doesn't rain too frequently where I live.
I have to sleep on my back or on my side with my back against the wall because ever since I can remember, I've been scared of something standing behind me or grabbing me. I also can't sleep with my leg or foot out of the blanket because of the fear of something grabbing me. This was before I watched Gerald's game and saw the way the Moonlight Man was licking her feet, which I also think about a lot. I'm 25 now, mind you, lol.
I don't know if it's unusual itself, but the amount of time I spend worrying and fearing would probably be considered unusual. I am extremely terrified of time passing, people getting older and dying, time passing causing friendships to fade, just slowly losing people I love in general. It fills me with the deepest, sickest anxiety, dread, and sadness. I haven't seen anyone professionally for it because I try not to think about it for too long, but sometimes it gets a hold of me and makes me sick.
Tape of any kind. I can't use it because I freak out. My coworkers are polite enough to close their office doors and mine before using it because the sound of packing tape makes me dry heave.